Hello, class. Welcome to Mountview Live. My name is Giles Terera. I hope you are all well and your loved ones are well. It is a very particular time. Very few moments in history where the entire planet has been so affected by the same event. And it is our task as actors and artists to try and reflect the human experience. And therefore, it's more important now than ever that we are prepared and we are ready, especially you, students, actors who are just starting out. It's so important that you are prepared and ready to answer that challenge of reflecting the human experience. So I wanted to create an environment where we could all come together, those of us who are young students, those of us who are more experienced students, to come together and talk and ask some questions and hopefully be inspired by each other. This week, our guest needs no introduction. She is an Oscar winner. She has won every award that you can think of. She is a dame of the British Empire, and perhaps most importantly, she is the president of our school, Mountview. So, and she's also my friend. So I would simply like to ask you to welcome Dame Judi Dench.
Thank you, Giles.
How are you, Dame Judi?
I love that everybody's there, although I can't see you. How very nice.
Well, I'm going to ask some questions. Thank you very much for agreeing to come and speak to us. Our students are very excited. They have lots of questions that they want to ask you. But I wanted to ask you a few questions just so that we can find out a bit more about you first. So if you're ready, I'll start, shall I?
Okay.
Okay. Where were you?
It's not rehearsed.
No, this is the completely unrehearsed, completely improvised.
Yes. Yes.
Where were you born, Judi Dench?
I was born in York. My parents, my mother was from Dublin, and my father went over his family when he was a very little boy. So they were in Ireland. Then he was a doctor, came to Lancashire for his first practice, and then came to York, and that's where I was born.
And where did you go to school?
And I went to a prep school in York, and then I went to the Mount School in York, which it was a Quaker school. And I wasn't a Quaker, but about 2 years after I got there, maybe not as much. I must apologise for this cough. This cough I've had for 84 years, just to let you know. Don't get alarmed.
No.
And then about 2 years after I went to the Mount, I became a Quaker, and that has suited me very well ever since.
And how did you get from the Mount to Central, the Central Speech School and Drama?
Yes, well, my brother, I had two brothers, one a doctor, and my middle brother, Geoffrey, only ever wanted to be an actor. That's all he ever wanted to be. And he went to Central, and he had 3 years there, and he won the Fulbright scholarship and went to Atlanta for a while, and then came back. And I caught it from him, really, because I wanted to be a stage designer. And that's what I started to train for. And then I suddenly decided I'd try for Central. And so that's where I went.
What made you want to be a stage designer? What first inspired you to want to do that? Can you remember?
No, we were always taken to the theatre as children. You know, we were always... we were always taken to York Rep, and I remember I once went to York Rep and saw Cuckoo in the Nest, and I remember a man jumped up out of a box at the end of these people's bed in some kind of undergarments, and I made myself sick laughing, and my mother took me out and then took me back the next night to know what happened. So we kind of died in the wool in a way. And they were huge. They loved the theatre. So we all went to the theatre, and we were always dressed up. And there was no television, of course.
Yeah. When you started at Central, what were your hopes? What did you hope to achieve there and come out of that training with?
Well, it was a 3-year training. I just hoped to get through, Giles, I think. Just hope to kind of make it. but I didn't have any, you know, I never was a person with kind of burning ambitions to go somewhere. But what we used to do then, which you could do, because you could go and sit in the Old Vic for something like, very, very little. I can't remember what it was. You used to queue and go and sit in the gods for, you know, a pittance. And we did that all the time. And I'm always saying, although now it's so difficult because, you know, theatres, well, I must talk about the past a bit. Theatres are and were very expensive. You know, seats are expensive, and the gods were just a place you could go and see everything. So we saw everything. I hope we can do that again.
Yes. How was training? How was drama school for you?
I really loved it. I loved it. We had great people teaching us, you know, and I remember, because it was in the Albert Hall at that time, we were the last 3 years to be at the Albert Hall before they moved to Swiss Cottage. So we used to cut lectures and go and hear people rehearsing, you know, glorious singing you'd hear. And also they made a film with James Stewart. I can't remember what it was called. It might have been The Man Who Knew Too Much or something. Anyway, he was filming there because everybody cut lectures. Everybody was. They wanted to bump into James Stewart, which you did often. And he'd say, hello, hi, how are you getting on? That's so exciting. But we had really, you know, Cicely Berry, who's not long right, because she was also at Stratford, and she taught us voice, and, you know, Maggie Rubell, I think, taught us dance, and I just remember it being a kind of glorious time, but also the fact that we did see theatre every night. Wow.
And how was it being away from home and being away from family and making that sort of transition?
It was okay, and they came down all the time and saw me, and we were always on the phone, and that's the way it was.
You do a huge amount for drama students and young actors. Why is it so important to you to help young actors?
Well, because it's so ephemeral. The job is it's so much a chance of luck. It's so much a question of being in the right place at the right time, to be seen by somebody and they think, oh yes, that's it, you know, that's a. When we were at Central, we used to do microphone technique, and I can remember being told at that. They said, yes, well, I don't think you're probably going to do anything ever on the radio, except perhaps you could do your imitation of a seabird. Not much encouragement there. And then when I was at the Vic, I mean, it just happened, do you know, that in my last year, I was seen at my final show and asked to go to the Old Vic, and I went and did an audition, and I was asked to play Ophelia, which critics were very shocked about. They thought it was terrible and gave me a rather hard time. But, you know, it's all grist to the mill, really. But during that time, I was asked to go and see somebody about a film, and I went, and I never wanted to make films at all. And I went to see them, and they, after the thing, they said, just, I'm sorry to tell you, they said, I'm afraid not right, he said. You'll never make a film because your face is wrongly arranged. It's the wrong place. So I thought, well, I don't care. All I ever want to do is to do Shakespeare, because that's my great passion. And that's, you know, the Vic and Stratford. It's all I really ever wanted to do.
Where did your passion for Shakespeare come? Had you seen much? I mean, you went to the theatre when you were young.
And I went to St. Peter's School in York to see the boys, both of my brothers. I mean, my eldest brother, who became the Doctor, played Duncan in Macbeth. And I was a little girl, and I went to see that, and he walked in, and he said his first line was, "What bloody man is that?" And I can remember thinking, swearing and Shakespeare. How one stayed with me all my life, child.
Did you always feel a special? I think many people would say that you, of all the actors that we can think of, have such an understanding of Shakespeare and such a way of making it so alive and vibrant. Did you always feel that you had a special connection to it? Did it resonate with you immediately, or was it something that you had to work more at?
I think I worked a lot at it, but it was the thing I saw first. I saw Macbeth and I saw The Taming of the Shrew. Both my brothers, Peter was in Macbeth, Jeff was in The Taming of the Shrew. And I was just a little girl. I was about 9, I suppose. And I loved them. And Jeff, I mean, was always quoting sonnets and things. I mean, he knew the most enormous bit of Julius Caesar.
Wow.
That bit, for once upon a raw and gusty day, the troubled Tiber chafing with her shore, Caesar said to me, dare it's like, now I have never been in Julius Caesar, but I know that speech so well. God, he used to do it all the time.
Well, I'm going to come back to Shakespeare in a minute, but you mentioned film and theatre, and you mentioned just now that you only ever wanted to be in Shakespeare at the beginning, in theatre at the beginning.
And now, actually.
But
during the lockdown, I've been trying to learn the sonnets.
Oh, I thought you knew lots of them by heart.
Yes, but somebody else
Come on, give us one.
I know about 5. I'm not
okay,
better.
We'll get to one of those in a minute. What would you say, having performed a huge amount of your career in the theatre, and then now a huge amount of your career in film, having won an Oscar and been nominated for Oscars dozens of times, lots of times, what would you say is how would you describe the difference in working in film and working in theatre as an actor?
Well, I know more about being on stage, and when I did start to do films, if I know anything about filming, it's because I watch other actors. What really good film actors, and I mean, I used to do that though at the Vic. I never went back to my dressing room. I used to stand at the side of the stage and watch, because you just, you learn. So, I mean,
yeah.
All the students know that, but you learn so much from watching people, and just watch a technique, and that old thing that we all know about film is that less is more. That if you have the right ideas in your mind, the camera usually will pick up on it. Do you think that's true, Giles? I think to a certain extent that's...
Well, I think sometimes you think that some people are just naturally... I mean, the person who said, oh, you'll never, you don't have the right face for camera. Some people you kind of think, oh, you see Marlon Brando or Meryl Streep, and you think, oh, well, or even, Marilyn Monroe, and you think, oh, well, the camera just loves you. No matter where you shoot from, it's believable. But yet at the same time, people who come to more of a screen career later on, say yourself, or when you think of Sir John Gielgud, who had this amazing career later on in his career on screen, and you think, well, he's incredible. Of course, it's just as believable and effective and moving as it is on stage. So I don't know. I'm not really sure.
No, I know. I mean, obviously, you can do less on the film because the camera is like where you are now to me. And on the stage, it drives me mad, actually, if I go to the theatre now and can't hear, or, well, my eyesight's so bad I can't see anyway. But if I can't hear as well, that's, I'm up the creek. And so you have to project on stage. You have to. It's no good just thinking, you can just get it to the middle of the stalls and no more. There's somebody who's paid money who's sitting right up there,
Yeah. I remember reading that, I think it was John Gielgud saying that there was some element of he got to a point where he just relaxed. I think he said that he was, to begin with, he was quite frightened of being on set and the camera. And there was a point in his career where he just completely relaxed, and therefore then he started getting more success in it. But that's the only thing I can think of, that there's some element where you can somehow just be more relaxed or at ease with it all. So
Depends, and it also depends very much on the director and the people you're with. You know.
You've also performed, as much as you've performed in a huge amount of Shakespeare and classics, Ibsen, Chekhov, all of them, you've also performed in musicals. Cats.
Steady.
Cabaret.
Steady, Giles. Steady, Giles.
The first one.
Let's just concentrate on Cabaret, shall we?
Cabaret. I'm talking about the New London. Cabaret, Little Night Music. How would you just?
And something else. Now, what was the other thing?
Oh,
the Good Companions.
Oh, the Good Companions. And also, I want to say there was a Shakespeare that was a musical. Was it
Comedy of Errors?
Comedy of Errors, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trevor Nunn. Oh, it was such, and Gilly Lynn and John Neg. Oh, such glorious it was. You can get it on a tape if you want to see it.
I think I've seen it. How do you? What's the difference between performing in a musical and performing in a play in terms of the creative process? Is there a difference?
Singing.
Is there a difference in approach?
Singing, Giles. Singing.
Oh, that's.
Before I did Cabaret, I was sent to, you won't know because nobody's old enough now to know, but a marvellous opera singer called Gwen Catley. And I was sent to her, and I think I must have gone to about 4 times. And she was simply wonderful. She said to me, I can't teach you to sing. I can only teach you how to put a song over. And when I did Cabaret, Hal Prince said to me, he said, you mustn't stop speaking in your voice in order to put on another voice to sing. The song should be an extension of what you've just said, and you should go on to present it in exactly the same way. And that, for me, took all the fear out of it.
Brilliant. I'm sure our students would love to hear that. So let's go back to Shakespeare. Okay. Let's take a part like Cleopatra, which you played famously. Where do you start with a part like that?
Well, with that, it's because it was directed by Peter Hall, who I'd worked with a huge amount. And so, he used to, he said to Tony Hopkins and I, do you want me to set this? There was one scene where the two of us, and we actually both elected not to have it actually set at all. So there was a tremendous fluidity about it, quite frightening actually, but it was thrilling because you never quite knew what was going to happen. But Peter, like John Barton, like Trevor Nunn, used to always, when directing, used to stand at a lectern looking at the script. Never looked up at you at all, looked at the script all those for several weeks, because we used to have the glorious, the really being spoilt by having something like 6-7 weeks to rehearse. And he used to just watch so that you obeyed the line endings. This now is not done so much, I don't think, but it is a foolproof way of speaking Shakespeare, because you will never run out of breath. You know that thing of when it comes to a half line and then there's another 5 iambic pentameter line here, then a half line, then another long line. You know that in that other half, sometimes, I'm so bad at saying this, you finish on a long line, then there's a half line, and then you'll find there's a half line, the next actor, which makes up the whole one. And that means you cannot make a pause between that and that. It's intended that should be a whole line. But if it's an iambic pentameter line, a half line, and then another iambic, you know that something happens in there. There's a place to mark something, you know. I explain this terribly badly, but when I was told,
I understand.
It kind of unlocked something for me.
Mm. But in terms of, I know recently you sometimes, if you have a great director that suggests you play this part, you will listen to them and trust them. But in terms of what is it about a part that you look for? Do you look for something to resonate in that part when you read it and think, oh, there's something I can connect to here? Or where do you have a set way of starting to build a character or starting to get to know a role?
No, how do you do? You try try as well as you can to understand the process of that person's thought, and then in a way translate it not to yourself, but translate it in a way that you understand it back to the person. You see, Giles, how bad I am about. I could never teach. Now I felt it. Get off. I can't explain it. You know, but I remember a very nice thing about Antony and Cleopatra is that I knew that in one of the lines, I knew that was meant to be a line that should get a laugh. That she said something, and I can't remember what the line was now. It's a long time ago, but I knew it. And we did 100 performances, and on the 100th, I got the laugh. I knew there was a laugh there. I knew that something, you know, knew that was meant to, you know, be something else.
You mentioned Peter Hall directed that production, and you said something to me once about some advice that he gave you about not trying to play the whole part all the way through. Can you remember?
No. Yes, I do remember that. I'd forgotten it till you said it. Because it's so alarming to be, you know, suddenly think Cleopatra. But if you get part, if you can somehow get parts of her, by the end you will get the whole person. Don't try and play the whole person in one scene, because that becomes you can't do it, and it also makes you anxious. So if you play as much of it as you can, but use the whole play for that, then by the end, with any luck, you might have her. Gone very, very quiet.
Staying on Shakespeare.
Oh, yes.
Suddenly, Macbeth.
Gone very, very quiet.
We can say that we're not in the theatre.
Yes, we can.
We can say Macbeth, we're not in the theatre.
Quite.
Your performance of this is a very personal question for me. Your performance of Lady Macbeth, in your performance, which is also was filmed at the Royal Shakespeare Company, there is a moment in I want to say the sleepwalking scene.
Yeah.
Where we come to Lady Macbeth and she's talking, and then at the end of it, you have this extraordinary kind of howl. I think the line is.
I'll tell you what the line is. I'll tell you what the line is.
Go on.
Oh, oh, oh. Now are we all freezing and cutting out and not working anymore? Are we all right? Can you hear me, Giles? No.
Yeah, I can hear. We're good.
Yes. Oh, oh, oh.
Oh, oh.
And I just because I think that at that moment, because after that, you know, she disappears, and I think at that moment that is when like the end of the bath, that's the bit where the water swirls around and simply disappears, and there's nothing left of her anymore. I think.
The reason I ask, I would recommend to our students to watch the production, because it's incredible, with Judi and Ian McKellen, directed by Trevor Nunn at the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Trevor, yes.
But there is this moment where you have this extraordinary howl, and this extraordinary sound comes from you, which seems to go on forever, and it's incredible. So my question was, which you've partly answered, where did that come from? And then the second part is, could you remember how you sort of sustain that, how you do that when you have to do it sort of 8 times a week? How you keep those moments alive?
By by not trying not to do it the same as the night before, but kind of in a way think it in your mind. There was a glorious time when it's at the moment when they're starting to kind of break apart, the two of them, and so when she comes and she says, you don't come to bed anymore, is what she's saying, and he has to say, light thickens and the crow makes wing to the rooky wood, is the line. And Ian one night said, light thickens and the crow makes wing to the rooky nook. And I was kneeling at his feet and went completely to pieces. Completely to pieces. And I thought, oh, well, I remember back on, I think, well, it's all right because she's not having too good a time at this moment. It's kind of all right that he should kind of laugh and cry a bit and not know where to put herself. Oh, gosh. He had such a... And also, Roger Rees, as Malcolm, broke his leg. I think he broke his leg. And we had no understudies. And so he had to play Malcolm. We couldn't cancel. He had to play Malcolm in a wheelchair. And at the very, very beginning, it was all sitting in that circle. They used to help Griff Jones, because he was Duncan. 2 people used to help him to his feet. And then Roger Rees came on in a wheelchair that night, and 3 of the witches passed, one dribbling and dragging her leg. And Mari Keane said to me, it's the Lord's production, she said. We all behaved so badly.
Now, I have a question about that later on, coming up.
Yeah.
So we'll put a thing on that. But I also have a question from one of our students about Lady Macbeth. So I wanted to ask that one. And it's from one of our students, Pablo, and he says, how do you approach a character such as Lady Macbeth without judging her actions as evil? Or do you interpret the part knowing that she's an evil person? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. Pablo will have to come and tell me whether I've done
How do you approach the part?
Well, you can't.
How do you approach the character without judging her as evil?
Because you've got to try. Our job is to try and understand not just what that actor says or does, but why they do it. Why they do it. And I started from the premise that I thought she was deeply ambitious. Everything she said, she's deeply ambitious for her husband. Deeply ambitious. She thinks if he wants that, then he ought to get it. And therefore, if that makes your intention, then it drives you, and then the whole play. I mean, you lack the season of all nature's sleep, I think she says at one point. I mean, she's kind of going out of her mind because instead of doing the things she wants to do, he should get what he wants, and they'll work together, and that suddenly it's driving them apart and a huge wedge through them, which ultimately is sleepwalking, when she simply said, I don't, in her conscious, unconscious mind says, that's the end of it. There's nothing left of me. So it's not really our job to judge. It's our job to try and understand why that person acts in that way, or believes that, or answers in that way, or reacts in that way. It's our job to try and understand that person, not to think, oh, this person is doing a very evil thing. You've got to try and understand why that they would do that. And I believe that she would have done anything for him.
Mm. Okay.
Isn't
it? Yes, I think so. I hope so. I hope that's a good answer. Can you name 3 people without whom Judi Dench, the actress, would not be here? And can you say how they've influenced you?
Yeah. John Gielgud. Because we did the Cherry Orchard. I left Stratford and did the Cherry Orchard with Michel Saint-Denis and all the other, I'm so sorry about this.
No.
It's also hay fever. All the other actors had been at Stratford. And this was a production to go to London. Dame Peggy and Sir John. And anyway, I went to Stratford to do this. And at the end of each run through and things, Michel would give people notes, and then he'd get to me, he'd go, and then he'd go to the next person. So I was in complete despair. I was really in a bad way. And then we did a run through at the end of a very bad week. And after it, after one act, Sir John said to me, he said, if you've been doing that for me, I'd be delighted. It's like everybody opening every window in my house. Suddenly I thought, then that's who I will do it for. That is the person I will do it for. And it changed for me, completely changed. He and Dame Peggy, they completely changed my life. And it's quite difficult that the 3 people, Peter Hall, put there, Peter, and I will put Michael Benthall, because he asked me to play Ophelia. I went to the Vic. I got frightful notices for it. And he kept me there from 1957 to the end of 61. And I played so many parts and understudied, and, you know, so probably those things.
Can you think of a moment? When I talk to our students a lot, you know, it's such a uncertain time when you're training and you don't know what's going to happen. Will you get an agent? Will you work? And often I say the thing to remember is to try and really value your instincts when you start working. To sort of not switch that bit of your brain off, that when you think, oh, maybe that doesn't feel right, or maybe I think I should be doing that, to listen to that. Because I found that it's actually stood me in really good stead a number of times. Because we're used to sort of being told what to do. We're used to the director or our agent telling us what to do. But I always say you must sort of remember your own instincts and value your own instincts. Can you remember a time where listening to your instincts really paid off?
I must have done it at some point, I suppose, Giles. But
do you know what I mean?
I know exactly.
The little voice in your head that says, maybe I should do that.
Maybe,
or maybe
I should try it this way. I know that. I suppose there must be. When Michael, my husband, and I did the Pooters, suddenly I dried. What was it called? It was called, never mind, it will suddenly come to me. It'll suddenly come to me. Poor old thing. Anyway, that was because it was the 2 of us, and Gary Fairhall and Penny Ryder were in it playing lots of other parts and never speaking at all. It was a very, very instinctive thing to go through. It was very intense, and Michael said, "Oh, we'll have the most wonderful time doing this because it's very funny and it'll just be the..." Well, it was really exhausted at the end of it because it was, you know, what is that funny noise? Oh, a police car.
Sorry, yes, can you hear that? Yes, it's sirens. Sirens.
It was in bits. It was in bits, the police car. And that was very much an instinctive. Yes, I know exactly. That had a huge Mr. and Mrs. Nobody, it was called.
There you go.
And so it was just the two of us. So we very, very much played off each other, and it ever so slightly changed every night. And you go away and you think, oh yes, perhaps that, you know, things would go. So lots and lots of ideas, but we had the joy of it only being the two of us. So we didn't throw anybody else, you know, which you can sometimes do. But so it was kind of very constructive, all that. We had a lovely time doing it, though very, very tiring.
And again for our students, in terms of how do you, a question I get asked a lot is, how do you deal with disappointment? You know, the disappointment that you have as actors of not getting a certain job or someone else getting a certain job, not be seeing for something.
I'll tell you something, we're made of sterner stuff. We take all the knocks, don't we? And you work and work and work, and suddenly you open, and then they say, oh, it's rubbish what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's rubbish. You think, oh, good grief. You know, you have to be very resilient, very resilient. You have to have a sense of humour, and you have to be able, in a way, to cancel and continue. It's something that Celia Imrie once said to me: cancel and continue. If we believe in the job and we believe in what we're doing and what we're trying to do, that's what you have to do.
Brilliant. Okay, so now I'm gonna open up to some questions from our students.
Right.
One of which we've already had, but this is a question from Tonya, and she says, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell her that might help her in her career?
Oh, Tonya, keep going. It's the same old thing. Just have the enthusiasm for it. See as much as you can, and just keep your enthusiasm. I'm sure you are enthusiastic, because actors, by the nature of our job, have to be. And just don't get wobbly. Don't get, put off by something. Don't get people saying, oh, well, of course it's difficult. And of course it's dodgy. And of course it's hard. But if you really love it, just keep going. Keep going.
This is a question from Jack. This is a very difficult question, but I think it's quite interesting. What has been your favourite project you've been involved in? There's one.
That's very, very difficult. Project. Your
favourite project of all time?
Oh, God. I've been doing this since 1957. Like I was asking Methuselah what his childhood was like. My most favourite, I don't know. Oh, golly.
We'll come back.
No, I mean, all the... I just remember seasons at Stratford when there were no, they didn't say, oh, you have to stop rehearsal at 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes with Women Beware Women, we went on till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then Brewster Mason and I went and sat beside the Avon and had a drink. I mean, I can't say that was my favourite project, but nevertheless, the glorious. And all those times when and also there was we had the Lord Chamberlain saying you're not allowed to say that, and not allowed to say that. Well, I mean, if you have any kind of sense of humour, it sometimes made doing the play the next night. Absolutely impossible, because it's all you think for. This is the bit we're not allowed to do. Don't make that list. You know,
Okay.
when they did Things Ain't What They Used to Be, an actor walked across the stage carrying a ladder, and he got a note. There was a note from the Lord Chamberlain saying that actor must not carry that ladder at that angle.
Why?
Well, I
Is it
not
decent?
suggestive. You try. We were called to try walking across the stage carrying a ladder and get it back.
Okay, a follow-up question to that. This is probably my favorite question. This is from Elena. She says, what was the naughtiest thing you've ever done on stage?
Elena.
Now,
Elena, sorry, there's an encyclopedia.
Love. Anyone who knows you knows how your reputation for being very naughty. But I thought that was a good question to have. I know you've got a lot to choose from, but if you could think, if you could think of one. But then also, the reason I say it is because it is a very different thing to being badly behaved or not constant. It is absolutely nothing to do with that, is it? It's something to do with.
It's something to do.
I don't know, the energy.
Something to do with having too much nerves too. If you somehow put that into it, means you don't have quite so much. You're not quite so nervous. If you're looking for something very, very naughty to happen, oh God, the most. I mean, I don't know. I didn't do this, but once when I was playing in the Henry VI's at the Old Vic, I was completely undressed in a crowd on stage. That was not me. That was not started by me.
Did you get told off for it though?
I got, somebody said, you know, what was happening there? Nothing to do with me, actually. But, oh God, naughtiest. I'm not sure about that question.
Okay. Maybe better to ask.
I might think of something and come back to it.
Okay.
I did, when we were doing Macbeth, I did give everybody a tiny little coloured spot, all the company. I would say you've got to put that somewhere on you that the audience doesn't see it, but we can. And the players are difficult enough.
Okay, next question. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Shakespeare. This is from Lucy Munden. Having done so much Shakespeare, what is your advice to young actors on how to get used to the language, which is now so far from our everyday speech?
Oh, Lucy, oh God, I just love to come and, you know, because Peter Hall, and I've said this before, Peter Hall and John Barton and Trevor Nunn, all very, very much were concerned with how it's spoken. And it doesn't mean da-da, 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 da. I'll tell you a glorious story about Roy Kinnear. This is to digress. He was asked to be in The Taming of the Shrew when Mikey played Petruchio.
Yeah.
And he was asked by Trevor Nunn. And Roy said, Trevor, I don't know. And Trevor said, look, it's all you have to do is iambic pentameter. Da-da, 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 da-da. Remember that, and then you won't ever run out of breath. And find just a way of marking the end of a line. So he talked him into playing the part, Baptista. And the time went on, and the reading came up. And Roy rang Trevor and said, how does it go again, Trevor? And so Trevor said, it goes da-da, 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 da-da. That's all you have to remember. And so the next day, they all met for the first time for the Shrew. Trevor made a speech. And then he said, now I think we'll start the reading. And Roy Kinnear had to speak first and said, gentlemen, importune me no further. Everybody completely fell apart. Completely fell apart. I was thinking, because it's not like that. But if you, it would, you know, it's taken me years to try and learn about actually using the verse in a way. It's not that It's not that you hit the end of each line, but it is, if you run it all together and don't observe the lines, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Mm.
But if you can obey it and find a way of doing it that doesn't make it sound da 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 da, it is clearer. I know it's clear.
Yeah.
That's not helped you, Lucy. I'm so sorry.
It has. It's helped me. I understand that. This is from Sadie. Oh, I'll tell you who is naughty. Is speaking of Kinnear, is Rory Kinnear.
Tell me.
Well, we did Hamlet. We did Hamlet together, and I was Horatio and he was Hamlet, and it was difficult. It was very, very difficult.
I had a whole day in a car with him when we were about to see MI6 being blown up. Nothing but trouble. Terrible trouble. This is from Sadie. What do you do to warm up before you work on screen or in rehearsals or in live performance? Do they differ from each other? Well, usually you have a warm up voice class in the theatre. Usually you have, beforehand, half an hour beforehand, that I always get in for, and that's really what I rely on,
Yeah. This is from we've had that question about Lady Macbeth. Oh, this is from Pablo again. This is an interesting one. When playing a real life person like Philomena, do you take into consideration the real life characteristics of that person, or do you create the character solely on what the script demands?
Well, interesting, because with Philomena, I met her before we started filming. The glorious thing about her is that she had the most wonderful sense of humour. And so that I kind of fed into the part because it was so much of her. And we had did we have a lunch together beforehand? I think we did, so that it's like that thing of not commenting on, try not to comment on a part. Yeah, but it's for other people to comment on. Do you know what I mean? Other characters to comment on. But that's why it's such fun playing some kind of villain. So wonderful. When we did, oh gosh, I'm going to forget. Oh God, can't remember the name of it. Sammy, what's the name of that? What was the name of that? Oh, I don't know.
Notes on a Scandal.
Yes, absolutely. Notes on a Scandal. Notes on a Scandal. There again, you can't comment on. You're not meant to comment on the character. You're meant to. Our job is not to comment on the character and think, oh, what a terrible thing to do, but to think, why is this person doing this? What is it in this person that makes them do it? And it was thrilling to do, just thrilling to do, to play that character who, was out and out villain, really. What was the original question?
It was, do you, Philomena, do you...
Yes, use. So I used yes. So she had a glorious sense of humour. And so that I fed into the part because it was very much of her,
Now, this question I think we've sort of touched on. This is from Lois. If you could relive a year of your life, which year would it be and why? I think we've kind of touched on that with the sort of Stratford.
Lois.
Maybe?
Yes, maybe.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. Or going to Australia with the company, and Michael flew out, and we weren't married. He asked me to marry him, and he was only going to be there for a week. And so at the end of the week, we all said goodbye. Michael, we're all going off to the theatre now. Goodbye, have a good flight. And when we came back, he was still there. And then he did for another week. Goodbye, Michael. Goodbye. Have a good journey. Give love to everybody. We came back and there he was there. He stayed to the end of the tour. Wonderful.
You said you told me once you went to the tour that you did in Africa, that you went on a tour.
West Africa. We did. Yeah, first company ever to go to West Africa.
What was that like?
Oh, it was incredibly exciting. Because I went to the Nottingham Playhouse. John Neville, the new theatre had opened in Nottingham. John Neville asked me to go there. And at the end of the first season, maybe, I don't know, he said, the British Council asked us to go to West Africa, Ghana and Nigeria and Sierra Leone. And we were to take their set books in English for the schools. And their set books were Twelfth Night, Macbeth, and Arms and the Man. And it was incredible. I know Peter Brook has written a book about being the first company to go to, but we actually were the first company because there were no theatres. We were in the open air and we played to Nkrumah, who was president then. It was terribly exciting. And also at the end of Twelfth Night, when Gordon Reed and I appeared as Viola and Sebastian, we did look startlingly alike. Everybody just ran to the front and shouted and pointed at us, and it was thrilling. But then conversely, I played Lady Macbeth there, with John Neville playing Macbeth, and any time when I said the Thane of Fife had a wife, where is she? It brought the house down. Anything rhymed absolutely brought the house down. Sometimes we said, say that again, say that again. So it was a baptism of fire, but it was terribly exciting. Very, very exciting indeed.
Wow. Okay, here's the final question. This is from Katie Cochran, and she says, what is good acting to you? I thought we'd end on a very difficult question. What is good acting?
What is good? Good acting is when you go to the theatre and you see a play and you completely understand what a character's up to on stage. Bad acting is when they're messing about a lot and can't be heard. Really bad acting. Isn't that, yes. If you believe, good acting is when you really believe somebody. Really believe them. And yes, it really believe them and understand why they're doing what they're doing and believe that what they're saying is coming from not a book, but from a place inside. Would you say that, Giles?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I would. When you can be completely. If I went to see your performance of A Midsummer Night's Dream.
I've done it 5 times, Giles.
The last one, the ones before that, I wasn't born.
At the Rose, you weren't born.
At the Rose in Kingston.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, I was just with the scene with you and Bottom with the horses, the ass's head. I remember just being completely wrapped into it. There was a moment where once the scene finished, I kind of came back to myself. I was somewhere else. I was completely taken into this story, these two people. It wasn't theatre, it wasn't acting, it wasn't characters, it wasn't costumes, it was just two people. And I think when you have those kind of moments, there's nothing like it, when you're lost, completely lost in it.
Yes, yes.
So I would.
If you could record what you've just said and send it to me, I shall play it to myself every day of the rest of my life.
Well, I think we have. They filmed it, so I think this exists. So they'll send you the audio. Then Judi Dench, thank you so much for coming to speak with us today. Thank you for your time. I'm sure our students, they were very excited that you were going to be coming to speak to us, and I'm sure they'll be very excited to listen to it and hear everything you have to say. So, God bless. Thank you very much.
See you. Keep well. Everybody there, keep well.
Yes. So that's all for this week. That's my little my Michael Parkinson, my Johnny Carson bit. That's all we have time for this week. Join us next week on Mountview Live, when we will be joined by another brilliant guest. But for now, thank you, Judi Dench, and see you next week.